Quite recently, here on Island, a hot topic were the results of Barbados's common entrance exam. And according to attorney at law Dwight Moseley, it matters not the school that a child goes to. After all, Dwight is a proud old scholar of the Parkinson Memorial School, and he shares his deeply personal journey and inspiring story on this episode. This is One on One. I'm Miss Ron Robinson. A very warm good evening to you. Welcome to this edition of One on One. This evening, our special guest on set is attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. Attorney Moseley, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ms. Ron. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. We're in a special period. We've just had the announcement of the 11 plus results. And we're going to touch a little bit on your personal story. You're a former student of the Parkinson Memorial School.
Absolutely.
And you are a proud old scholar, but you had a special message for any child who's out there who sat the 11 plus and may not have passed or achieved marks for the school that they may have wanted to.
Yeah. But what I would say to those children, Ms. Ron, is what was said to me many years ago. It does not matter what school you pass for. Really, all that matters is what you do when you get there. Don't be ashamed of your school. Be proud. And look at this as an opportunity to do a lot better in the near future. Life does not begin and end with common entrance or with the school that you pass for thereafter. Yeah. What really matters is getting into the school, focusing on the work, taking in as much knowledge as you can while you're there, taking advantage of all of the opportunities that are afforded to you as well, and just putting your best foot forward. Yeah. That's what really matters. At the end of the day, all you could do is your best. I believe they would have done their best up until this stage, and it's just to strive for better going forward. Yeah. And they'll be just fine.
Yeah, important advice. A lot of parents sometimes get upset when the child doesn't perform as well as they should. Children may cry real tears about not achieving, going to any of the older grammar schools. But we have a number of Barbadians who've gone on to do excellent things in the island and even internationally.
Absolutely.
Who would have, gone to some of the newer secondary schools, as we would call them.
Yes.
But your story started in Barbados at the age of 11. And tell us about life prior to age 11 when you would have passed for the Parkinson School.
Thank you, Ms. Ron. So I was born in 1993. I was born in Guyana to a Guyanese mother and a Barbadian father. Full Bajan father, so to say. But from the age of, as some people say, 0 up until the age of 11, I attended school in Guyana. As a matter of fact, I wrote common entrance at the age of 10, and I passed for a very good school in Guyana. Some would say the equivalent of a foundation common year in Barbados. But at the age of 11, my father felt it best that was the time where I should essentially transition into Barbados and into our education system. When I say our education system, I mean Barbados education system.
So this is around 2004 or
2005.
2005.
Yes, please. So in 2005, we took the necessary steps. I don't know if I had said this, but I am a Barbadian by descent through my father. Yeah. So we came down to Barbados. We visited the ministry. They provided the options that were available for schooling purposes. At that time, how it was put to me was that there were a little bit of an issue with regards to placing me in schools as well. So the options that would have been put on the table would have been Combermere and Parkinson. And they had said, they would go back and they would look and see if there were any other options. Right. Yeah. We visited Combermere, and that was a good experience. We also visited Parkinson. Parkinson, having seen my grades, they were elated to have me same way. At the time, Mr. Aline, God rest his soul, he was the principal, and he was very impressed with how I would have performed up until secondary school. This would be Form 1. So they welcomed me. My father, being who he is, and I love him dearly, but his whole thing, and he was right about it, he said, look, it doesn't matter what school you go to, is what you do when you get there. And that sat with me all the years as well. So his whole thing was, you could go to Parkinson or you could go to Combermere, it doesn't matter. The difference between the two and the difference in the choice came down to when I could start the school. The principal for Combermere, he was on vacation at the time, and they said that he had to give the final okay before I could start the school. So if I was to go to Common, I would have to wait at least 2 weeks for him to come back and give the final sign off. Parkinson was ready for me to start from day one. And my father said, yeah, whoever's ready for you to start from day one, that's where you're going. And I went to Parkinson from Farm 2.
You enjoyed those years at Parkinson from 2005 until 2010, becoming one of the head boys at the school.
I was the head boy.
Role at Parkinson School at the time. And leadership
Absolutely.
being a part of your DNA as well.
Absolutely. We kind of cracked a little joke about this before, and I always said I was kind of dragged into the fold by my mother. Well, she's that type of person. From a very young age, she always pushed me to be a leader. And I say push, I think it was always in there, but she was the type of person that would, she would really overdo it sometimes. We would go to weddings and she would say, you got to speak on behalf of the family when it was time to give a speech. So I was always pushed. And when certain activities come up, I was always pushed. In secondary school, and I'll tell you, Parkinson had and has some of the best teachers as well. And they too pushed me. There were times where, we all play the fool sometimes. We talk a little bit too much in class and so on. Teachers will call you out. I had teachers that I remember there was a time one of my teachers, very, very close and dear to my heart, Miss Duglin, who called me out essentially. She had asked the class who thought they were ready to study, to take up this CXC, and I was the only student that put up my hand and said, I was ready. It was in fourth form. And she said, Dwight, you're not ready. You're always talking. You're not ready. And that, lit a fire in me. And I think she knew it was going to light a fire in me, as a matter of fact. And she said, but let me talk after class. And she said, Dwight, you got a lot of potential, but you need to focus. And from that day on, something happened, something switched. And I locked in. And that's why I always tell students, don't waste time in secondary school. The time is very limited. It seems long, but it's very limited, and it really does impact the rest of your life. I have made a note of that, and I would always tell children, that is when you set the foundation for life.
For the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Now, the thing is, you could go to BCC, University of West Indies. I went to the law school, but I went into the masters again. You could do all of these things, but if you don't have the right foundation, you're kind of lost to some degree. So for me, that is the perfect time to set a good foundation for life. And I always say, that's the one time where persons will actually take some time to go through things with you. You see, when you get to BCC and UE and so on,
you're pretty much on your own.
You're kind of on your own. There are some good lecturers and tutors up there, and you'll notice I say lecturers and tutors. They're not teachers. They're there to lecture a group of people or to tutor them to some degree. But you will not have that hand-holding that exists in secondary school. And when you go to Parkinson, and not just Parkinson, but the schools, the newer schools, as you rightfully termed it, you'll realize that there's a level of attention to detail that the teachers place in students as well too. There's a lot more time that would be given to students as well, allocated to each student as well. I can't speak for the older schools. I don't know if that amount of time is given, but I know I benefited from that as well too. There are times that I felt the system was a little slow when I was at Parkinson because I was accustomed to a faster pace. But at the same time, I still benefited from the slower pace as well too, because it not only meant that I learned the work, but I learned it well. Right?
So there was a lot of thorough encouragement
absolutely.
At the Parkinson School.
As long as you are willing to accept it, to embrace it. Yes, absolutely. I think there were a lot of persons a lot of my classmates and so, who may not have been so inclined. And some of them still ended up doing well and so on, because I think some of them after school, or even some of them later on in school, they kind of got the stuff together as well too. But yeah, there is great attention to students placed at those schools.
Dwight, I have to answer this question.
Sure.
Some may ask, and I don't mean to play devil's advocate, but some people may ask, why do we have so many children from the private school excelling against those who are within the public schools, going on to some of the older secondary schools? For a number of parents, in terms of networking, rubbing shoulders with the haves, if you're coming from a family that, maybe marginalized or disenfranchised or whatever, but you're still saying it matters not the school that you go to, even within the primary school system?
You see, I might not be the best person to speak about the primary school system in Barbados, but I'll speak about it generally, because as somebody who also attended private schools during the primary school stage of my life, there's a level of attention that you also get in the primary school. that I don't know
in
the
the
private
government
schools.
in the private schools.
Yes, in the private primary schools.
That you would have similar to that in the public newer secondary schools?
Yes. I found that there was a great similarity between the two, to be honest with you. And so I can't say for certain that if you attend a government primary school, I don't know for certain that the attention is marginally less. But I know for a fact when I went to the private primary schools, each student got the requisite amount of attention needed for them to succeed. And I think it might be funny to say this, Miss Ron, but a lot of times you just get what you pay for. Persons who tend to send the children to these private schools do so knowing that it will be smaller classes and they will get the requisite amount of attention as well. Because a lot of times in the government primary schools, you might have 8 classes of 30 children or something. So when you go to a private school, sometimes you might sit down in a class with maybe 15 persons, something 20 persons maximum. Right? So there in any given day is less persons that the teacher has to account for their, for their step forward. Yeah.
But you're still staying within that stream that it matters not the school that a child attends, be it primary or even secondary, like within your case.
When I made the statement, I meant mainly secondary.
Mainly secondary.
But I still believe holistically that it doesn't matter. I think it really comes down to the individual at the end of the day. And I'll tell you this, I'll even take it all the way to university. When you go to university, you're almost on your own. Yes, you get the necessary lecturing and so on, but the work is on you to do. Yeah. When you at secondary school, yes, you're getting the necessary attention and so on, but you still have to put in the work. Yeah. You could get all the attention in the world at secondary school, primary school, university, any tertiary education. And if you don't put in that work, that individual work, you're going to fail. Yeah. You know, there's that old time saying, failure to prepare, prepare to fail.
Yes, yes, yes.
That carries through regardless of what level of schooling you are at. And that's why you would find parents sometimes to assist the children in preparing, they would do extra lessons and so on as well too. Right? It's just the necessary preparation needs to be put in place. My position is, though, you can learn at any institution once you are willing to put in that work.
Once the individual is willing to put in that work.
Absolutely.
And going back to your time at Parkinson, you became head boy, you were encouraged into leadership by your parents. And there was also the fact that you ended up leaving Parkinson with more than 10 CXCs, at least 11 CXCs as a young 15-year-old, 16-year-old at the time. Yes. So you were prepared to put in that work, and you had the cultivation from your household as well. Yes. An ambitious mother, a Barbadian father who would have traveled around the Caribbean as well.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds funny, but yeah, absolutely. No, I'll tell you, my mother, as you rightfully said, she was ambitious as well. My father, he's a little bit more soft-spoken, a little bit more quiet, but he's also the type that, pushes you in his own way, so to say. And they always wanted the best for me. My father may not say so much in words, but I could always tell by his actions that there was always that drive. My mother, from very early, she placed in me that the need for that preparation. To focus. And whenever the time might come, boys will be boys at the end of the day. You want to go and play and so on. She would say, there's a time and a place for everything. I'm going to allow you to go and, have a little bit of fun, but know when you come back in, it's time to work. So there were times that I strayed, I could tell you, and I am not going to sit here and pretend like I was the perfect student or anything in the sort of mission. There were times I failed a course or so as well too. But failure is a part of life. Yeah. It's how you come back from failure as well too. My life is a product of somebody who went through things as well too and came out on the other side. You understand? Successful on the other side. I don't believe in making a mistake more than once. I learned from every mistake that I've made in life same way. And that makes me who I am today.
Sometimes the L's that we take are lessons for the future.
And it's absolutely necessary. A person who has had no losses in life have not lived a life. And when that first loss comes, they will not know how to deal with it. Yeah.
Were you always interested, considering all that you've said, in becoming a lawyer or pursuing law?
I'll tell you something, Miss Rod. I did not want to become a lawyer until I was like probably 18. I wanted to be a doctor for my entire life. My entire life, my family, they will call me Dr. Moseley. And I wanted to be a pediatrician because I have a love for children. But my school did not offer all of the requisite science subjects. So when I left Parkinson and I was going to transition to BCC, there was a lovely lady that I met. It was during the orientation process. You had to put down the subjects that you were interested in. My subjects already went, and I wanted to study IT, and I believe it was politics, because I always had a little bit of an interest in politics as well. And the lady saw my subject. She said, "You got some really good CXCs. Why you don't study law?" I was still not interested, but there was a little time period in which you could make the amendment if the need ever arise. And I told my mother what the lady said. My mother was elated. Something about having a lawyer in the family, I don't know, send up something for her. And she said, "No, you're studying law." And I said, "Not studying law." But my mother always wins for some reason. And I went back and I made the amendment and I started studying law, and I realized I liked it. And I had a teacher by the name of Mr. Burke, Erskine Burke. I think he's the deputy dean for the University of West Indies now, something of the sort. But he was the very first person who created a fire in me for the law, right? If I am honest, he created a love in me for the law as well. And it just went from there. And people will always say, when you're good at something, you generally follow it. So I realized I was good with analyzing the law and so on from very early, and it just went from there.
And this has changed the entire trajectory of your life.
Absolutely.
The willingness of your mother to continuously support you.
Yes.
Erskine Burke at the time, being a lecturer at
BCC at that
the
time.
Barbados Community College.
Yes.
And then also the encouragement and cultivation from your tutors.
Absolutely.
As well. Dwight, we're going to pause for a short commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to touch on youth leadership, youth opportunity, and the job market here in Barbados.
Sure. Looking forward to it, Ms. Sharon.
We'll be right back with more of this one-on-one with attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. Please stay with us.
The Build Up Barbados Foundation is a Barbados-based charity dedicated to creating meaningful change through poverty alleviation and youth empowerment. Our mission is centered on supporting vulnerable members of our community, particularly the homeless, through outreach initiatives, essential aid, and acts of compassion. We also believe in investing in the next generation by providing young people with mentorship, guidance, opportunities, and access to resources that help them unlock their full potential. Through community engagement, education, and support, Build Up Barbados strives to inspire hope, create opportunity, and build a stronger, more empowered Barbados for everyone.
Welcome back to this edition of One-on-One. We're so happy that you decided to stay with us. We're having a conversation with attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. Attorney Moseley, we mentioned to our viewers to continue the conversation surrounding the 11 plus exam and your personal story of, being a former student of the Parkinson School and going on to excel in law. One of the questions that I really want to ask in terms of that shift from leaving the Parkinson School and going on to study law, what were some of the main, not necessarily the challenges, but some of the opportunities that came up for you? I know sometimes students will say, well, I don't know if I want to put the school that I went to on my CV or whatever the case is. Did you find that in terms of your experience?
Not for me, Ms. Ron. I'll be honest with you. I was always very proud of my school. So going into BCC, I had no problem with anybody knowing where I came from. One of the difficulties though, and I'll never forget this, when I went to BCC, I went with one friend from my school. Now you go into a school where a lot of persons already know each other, so the transition is easy. Yeah. But when you transition in, and the one friend that I went there with, she continued to study IT. No, IT. Information technology. She continued studying that. So she was on a whole other side of the campus. Yeah. I was closer to the gate, so to say.
She was on by commerce is what?
Yes,
Yeah?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We refer to it as closer by the gate. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but she was all the way down on the other side, so I never really saw her. So I guess one of the difficulties is now you're coming into school, you don't know anybody. It's almost like secondary school all over again. Now, somebody would say, but you ain't come there for that purpose. But the truth of the fact is comfort plays a part in schooling as well too. When you have friends in a school, it's almost like an easy transition. When you now have to come in, the awkwardness exists and you now have to meet people and so on. That could be a little difficult as well. But that's a part of life as well too. But I have never had a situation where, I felt a way about persons knowing what school I came from and these type of things. I was always proud of Parkinson. And the fact that I was at this level having attended Parkinson as well made me even more proud. And I was sitting in classes with persons who attended some of, quote unquote, the higher schools, or as you would refer to them, the old schools. And I was performing just as well as they were performing, and in some cases even better. So that made me even more proud.
Yeah.
Right? Because I knew I belonged.
And you were in the Parkinson band.
Absolutely. Always.
And you are at this level now, excelling as a young attorney, only
absolutely.
at 33 years old.
Absolutely.
Another question I want to ask, why is it so important for you to carry that banner almost as an ambassador for the Parkinson Memorial School?
Yes, I am. I'll tell you this. I wear this banner proudly. And I always want the children that follow me, the young adults that follow me, to know that it's possible. And that's why I return to Parkinson, and they will tell you as much as I can. Anytime Parkinson calls me, I am there. Whatever they need, I am there. Because I need the younger generation to know that anything is possible as long as you put your mind to it, you work smartly, and you're ready to put in that work. That's very important.
Would you also be touching on the importance of extracurricular activities in terms of how that would have contributed to you as a young leader at the Parkinson School?
Yes.
You would have been a part of the prefect body as head boy.
I was the head boy, yes.
But there were also other
other
spaces that you would have touched as well.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, there was several clubs that I was a part of. I remember we had some young students, and this was when I was a little older in the school. I was probably like 4th or 5th form. At the time, Akhenaton Burroughs was at Parkinson.
The influencer Akhenaton.
Absolutely. I met Akhenaton because Akhenaton wanted me to join the Integrated Science Club, the little science club. At that time, I won't call you a science geek, but he was interested in science, and him and another student by the name of Matthew, roped me into this science club, and we had a good time in science club as well. But there was a lot of other activities we were involved in. I think when you show certain interests, you would find teachers will try to rope you into other activities as well. That also helped to build you as a person as well too. I remember there was this one time Parkinson agreed to attend. It was like a day where all the different schools would have been invited to BCC. I was in 5th. I was the head boy at this time, and it was about public speaking and effective speaking and so on. And every school had to send a representative to go and make a speech. I didn't even know I was being sent at the time same way, because everybody had to put down the names beforehand. And I remember when it was time for Parkinson, my teacher, Miss Douglas, literally tapped me on the shoulder. She was like, Dwight, go and represent the school. And I looked around at her like, what? And it was a competition. That's how you mean go and represent the school? Nobody didn't say anything to me. But it almost felt like what my mother used to do to me before as well. So I wasn't pushing back. I was like, accustomed to this. Let me go. And I remember I went ahead and I gave a speech out of this world. And I remember while making the speech, I was rolling up the cord for the mic. And when I got to the end, I said, all right, folks, it's time for me to wrap it up. And everybody went mad and they started hitting the windows. It was a lot of fun. And in the end, I won the competition. And the funny thing is, the prize, I think they give a trophy and a prize. The prize was meant for a female, because they said a male never won the competition for the past how much ever years they were holding this. And it was like a face bowl steamer, and I gave it to my mother. And she said, how come they give this to you? I said, because usually males don't.
It was for a female.
Absolutely. So even something like that, I think contributed seriously to who I am today as well too. I've been fearless for years. Even coming out of the law school and coming out and practicing on my own, I had to be fearless. But I didn't become fearless after I left the law. So I was fearless long before. I am the type of person you could say, Dwight, this is something new. This is something you don't know anything about. And I would be like, all right, well, let me try. At the very least, let me try.
So we've touched on your history at the Parkinson Memorial School.
Yes.
Right. But bringing things to the current day situation here in Barbados, you've decided to settle down and practice law in Barbados.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on opportunities for some of our young people leaving the secondary school system and looking for opportunity who may not, be accepted at the University of the West Indies or even colleges and universities outside of the Caribbean region? What are your thoughts on taking advantage of youth opportunity here in Barbados? We have a rising entrepreneurial culture.
Yes.
Not everybody is an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lawyer, a doctor.
No, absolutely. In short, I'll tell you, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And I think if you're going to become an entrepreneur, you need to look to see what exists and either offer more or offer what does not exist. And that's a big part of being an entrepreneur, because you could come and do the exact same thing that everybody else doing in the same way they do it, and you wouldn't see that much progress. You might see something from your efforts, but not so much as if you come with something novel. So I would often tell persons, sometimes it's good to travel and see what exists outside.
Traveling definitely helps to open the doors
Absolutely.
for our young people. And there's so many opportunities for training here within the Caribbean, training outside the Caribbean. A lot of, companies and enterprises within the North American market, even within the same space of advocacy, are looking for our young, bright Caribbean minds. And even for those who may not have gone to the older schools, there are plenty of opportunities out there if only the dots could be connected for our young people.
Absolutely.
But yes, agreeing to your point that travel
it is very important. Same way, it really as somebody who does a fair bit of traveling now, it tends to open up your mind. You when you stay in Barbs is a very small country at the end of the day, and it's not to say just because you're from a small country you have a small mind, but the extent of what's out there sometimes is foreign to you, so to say. So something that's important, and even if you can't do that, there's a level of research that can be done if you're willing to put in that work as well, where you could find some really, really good ideas and you could essentially bring that home or marry it with something that maybe you have already had in mind as well too. But the opportunities are there, right? I would tell young entrepreneurs, understand that initially it will be hard. Every entrepreneur must understand that, because there's a little bit of entrepreneurship in every absolutely, and in every business. Even as an attorney, I consider myself an entrepreneur to some degree as well. I might not sell a product, but I sell a service. And because of the way how I sell it, I will consider myself an entrepreneur. And as I said, it's not just about bringing something new. Sometimes it's the way you do it. I might consider myself an attorney who offers the same services that other attorneys offer, but I might offer it in a different way. I might approach it a little differently. I might approach my clients a little differently as well, same way. And as a result, I might have a different type of relationship. An entrepreneur could essentially take that same position as well. Even if they're selling a product, sometimes it's the way in which you engage with your clientele as well that keep them going, or even make them refer somebody else to you. It's your attitude. And that, I remember when I was in the law school, we had a registrar who, the very last thing she said to a group of us was that your attitude and not your aptitude will determine your altitude. And that stuck with me. And it is more true to them than it probably was back then. You will get so much further if you have the right attitude. As young entrepreneurs, you got to watch how you're dealing with your clientele. Persons think you can have this nasty attitude and people just keep coming back because you have the best service. Somebody will go to a second tier person, somebody who might not even offer the same type level of product or service you might offer, but that person might have the right attitude. That person might treat them with respect. Maybe you would realize that if you were to mimic that person and you started to show your clientele more respect and, treat with them on a certain level, that you would do a lot better as well too. So I think sometimes attitude adjustment is needed for entrepreneurs as well. That's very important.
So how you treat the people that you service is what helps to keep people coming back.
Absolutely.
Because business is about people at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is my position at the end of the day. I believe we should all start on a basis of respect. Mishran, the way I see it, you can like somebody, you can love somebody, and if you don't respect them, you're wasting your time. Let us start. There's God first, and then there's respect. And we should always start from, yeah, we should
God
always,
first and then
God,
respect.
there's God first. God is above everything.
Yes.
Nothing can happen without God. Everything happens through God.
Yeah.
But right after God, there is respect.
Yeah.
I hold respect that high. And when I treat with people, I treat on the basis of respect. Before I disrespect you, I will say nothing to you first. I'm not going to disrespect anybody.
Yeah.
I try to be as cordial as possible. And that's why I said there's entrepreneurship in everybody and in everything. It's the way you treat with people that sometimes determine how far you get. And if you have staff, the way you treat with your staff will determine how your product sometimes is pushed. Especially as young entrepreneurs, you might bring on one person. And if you want that person to treat with your clientele well, you have to treat with that person well as well too. That is fundamental. And you have to ensure that the good treatment that you give to that person, that they're also passing on to the clientele.
You mentioned having a love for people. From what age did that begin, and where do you think that is?
I feel like the love was always there. Michelle, I have been humbled so much in life, and in a good way. I remember I used to say when I was younger that the one thing I would never do in life, and it's funny, I would never work in a supermarket packing shelves. And that was my very first job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When I finished university, I took a year off because I wanted to work first to kind of cut back on some of the loans, because at that time we were going to law school. You had to pay some of the way. It wasn't like no, the government changed and they made things a little easier for the students. Give thanks for that same way. But for that year, I wanted to work, and I got the opportunity to go and work. At that time, it was at the sales center, and that's one of the best experiences I've ever had. And I'll tell you why. I met some of the best people that I've ever met in my life doing the same work I was doing and servicing persons who maybe in my younger life I would say, I don't want to do nothing for this person same way. But the opportunity presented itself and I did the best I could do. And I realized I got the opportunity to speak with a lot of persons. And then I realized this wasn't that bad. And when I say it humbled me, it kind of showed me that there was a time maybe I thought I was better than this. And in life, you got to realize that you're not better than anybody else. We all on the same level for all intents. We all meet on the same level. We just do different jobs, right? So that for me kind of encouraged me along the way how to treat with people, how to meet people, and it goes so far back. It goes into my family history. My grandmother, who was a maid at the Grantley Adams International Airport. There's so much that contributed to this person that you see today. It goes all the way to. It comes all the way up to me becoming the president of the Heart and Stroke Foundation and dealing with people on that level. There's so much that I have done so far in my life, and it all involved dealing with people and dealing with people on a certain level. And I don't regret any of it.
Lovely, lovely, heartwarming. You made mention of the fact also that you are fearless.
Yes.
You always were.
Yes.
Expand on that just a little bit.
Yes. Maybe I might be going too far for saying, because when I say always where it's almost like you come out of the womb fearless kind of. There's always been something about me that's always pushed me to want to be better. And I've accepted from a very young age that if you want to be better and you want to get to the next level, you can't do that in a comfort zone. So every time something presents itself, and when I say I'm fearless, it's not that I have no fear at all. It's that I am willing to rise above that fear and do what needs to be done. So something might happen. I might be called to do something, and I might get the heebie-jeebies initially. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. But immediately as I think I am not ready for it, I say, no, you're ready. Put on your big boy pants and go and do it. That's who I always was. And that's who I will always be.
Coming also that relationship as well from your mom, even though your dad was a quieter parent, a mother who always encouraged you, and having that experience of having a parent push you.
Yes.
Can you also touch on the importance of parents encouraging their children, using word power to not tear them down, but to build them up through
Absolutely.
what they say? Sometimes we don't always remember what a person might say, but always how they make
felt.
us feel. And it sounds as if your mother tried to make you feel as
I could do anything.
encouraged as possible, yeah.
Absolutely. No, what you put into the atmosphere is very powerful, to be honest with you. If you tear your, and this, I'm going to speak on the parents part of it, but even as an individual, if you tear yourself down every day, you tell yourself you can't do something, you'll never do it. And that holds true, especially in your younger life with your parents. If they don't give you the necessary encouragement, because when you're young, you know, kind of finding your way, and a lot of times you look to your parents for that guidance. If the persons that you are looking to for the guidance don't believe in you and don't give you that encouragement, you in turn will not do it for yourself. And you might look at yourself and you might think, you know, I incompetent or I incapable or whatever the case is. And you might not be able to take that step forward. So it's very, very important from a very, very young age, for your parents to let you know how important you are, that you can do anything. The sky is not even the limit.
Yeah.
That has been proven in history. We have passed that by far. And let your children know that you love them as well too. I don't think parents do that enough. Let them know that you have their back. You love them and you believe that they can do anything. Encourage them to put in the work as well, because that is fundamental. It's one thing just to tell a child you could do anything, but then you don't put measures in place to ensure that they're actually doing the right things as well. So as a parent, you play a fundamental role in your child's success from a very young age. There will come a time where independently they will be able to grab the torch and run with it by themselves, because they have that strong foundation. But initially, it is on you as the parent to ensure that they have the necessary start needed to get to the point where they can run with it. Yeah.
I love that you made mention of that, and that will lead into our final segment, Dwight. I want to ask you, do you think leaders are born or made? And what would you say are your top 3 keys to success in a Barbadian economy? But we're going to pause for another short commercial break.
Sure.
We're going to pause for a short commercial break, but we'll be right back with more of this conversation with attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. Please, we encourage you to stay with us.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Danielle Reed-Lilo and I am a general physician. Today we're going to have a casual talk about STDs and STIs. An STD is a sexually transmitted disease and an STI is a sexually transmitted infection. An STI is an infection which is caused by having sexual contact with an infected person. When symptoms develop, it is then termed an STD. All STDs are treatable, but only some are curable. Everyone that has sexual intercourse is at risk. Get your partner or partners tested before every new sexual relationship and use protection.
So happy that you've decided to stay with us for this final segment with attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. Attorney Moseley, we mentioned to our viewers to touch on your thoughts on the top 3 keys to success within a Barbadian or Caribbean context.
If I had to give only 3 things, Mishran, I would say within our context, it's necessary to work extremely smart. Not necessarily hard. There's a time and a place for everything, but I believe in working smart. I think it's necessary to make the right connections. That is important, and that comes, as we were talking about, your attitude and so on. Because if I am being all the way 100%, you could be the smartest person in the world, and if you don't make the necessary connections, you might not
network.
Absolutely, networking is extremely
capital.
Absolutely, because you might not get a chance to show it. And thirdly, integrity. I think that is probably one of the more important things. And I think to some degree, some persons may have lost their way in that regard, but it is very important to stay honest as you can be. and to always try to do the right thing. I think we generally know what the right thing is. I think sometimes people pretend like they don't know, but we most of us would have been brought up in the right way, and we have inclination to knowing right from wrong. And it's very important to keep your integrity high at all times. Yeah.
So it's important to be earnest and hardworking, but also working smart.
Yes.
And this thing about hard work, coming from a society that was colonized,
Yes.
The importance of thinking smartly, thinking on your feet, and looking for shortcuts to some degree, while being,
I wouldn't even say shortcuts. I would say efficiency.
Efficiency.
Absolutely.
That's a better word choice.
Yeah.
But you're saying the importance of social capital as well.
Yes.
Knowing who does what and where they're placed as well. The importance of networking.
And that's a part of working smart as well too, Mishra. Especially as we were talking about young entrepreneurs and so on. Depends on the type of product or service you're offering. That could save you a lot of money as well too. Networking with the right persons. You might go on the market and you might pay, I just try to figure out it, $5,000 for something. Not knowing that there's a better deal that exists with somebody else, only if you would network. If you would put yourself out there and present yourself in a certain manner, somebody might look at you and say, that's a good young man or that's a good young woman. Let me see how I could assist this person. And that's very important.
Which is a part of keeping people central as well. You mentioned your love for people in the segment before.
Yes.
But also looking to see who's within this Barbados. And Barbados is a small place.
It is a small
Networking
place.
is not that hard as you're saying.
No, networking is not the hardest. You just got to be willing to put yourself out there as well, same way. There's always spaces in which you can essentially go and network. But I'll say this as well. When networking, be yourself. I think persons...
Being authentic.
Absolutely. Authenticity is very important when you're network. If you consider yourself a good person, a decent person, you could afford to be yourself. I think the only persons who should put on a facade or a mask might be the
doctors.
No, I wouldn't go first. I was going to say the horrible people. I wouldn't want to, throw that part.
Mask.
Right, the facade or absolutely. Only doctors should be wearing masks. COVID has gone a long time. But yeah, the only persons who should essentially put forward some farce or this fake person is somebody who knows within themselves that they're horrible. But most of us don't think of ourselves as horrible. So be authentic. Put out your own self, same way.
Do you think leaders are born or do you think leaders are made?
I think some leaders are born, if I'm honest. I think some people have a natural inclination to being leaders. And then I think some people learn it along the way. I think some people put in a lot of effort and a lot of training into becoming effective leaders. And then there's some people who just have this natural thing about them where it just comes so natural to them. If I am honest with you, I think I was a born leader, if I am honest with you. I think along the line, I have refined it a little bit, same way, but I think I was always a leader. I was a little bad when I was a little boy.
Bad.
I was bad, I was a boy. Boys, you break your toys and so on. I remember there was a time in primary school where, I realized, even with children and so on, there's a level even control you can have. It was best for me to put it, me seem like a horrible little child. But I remember there was a time that my teacher had to call my mom into the school and say, you got to talk to Dwight. I would tell the children to do things and they would look to Dwight to find out if it's okay for them to do it. And I was never a bully in school.
Right.
Throughout my entire school life, I was never a bully. But at the same time, it's like I had an influence.
A school influence.
Absolutely. I've always had that influence. Even when I was at the Parkinson Memorial School, when I became the head boy, it was easy for me to be the head boy at the time because there was an influence I already had over some of the students that they were considered bad. They respected me to a certain degree, same way. So if they were doing something, I had a word with them, that would stop. There was always that influence. And I think that comes from being a born leader. I think certain things comes easy. And then for some people, it's a little harder. And it does a learned trait for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had this influence at school and you were telling us a story earlier. And you made mention of it just now in terms of also having relations with some of the other students at school who were not necessarily book focused.
Yes.
They had other interests.
Yes.
But you were able to have conversations with them to kind of stir them onto the right path as well.
Of course.
And you found that easy.
Initially, it was a little hard, if I'm honest with you, because when I first came to school, I was new. I now have to make friends. It's hard to influence people when you don't know them at all. So they had to get to know me, I had to get to know them. But I think over the years, what happened is when results come in and persons see you doing well, their parents also want that for them as well. So then they start to gravitate to you. And then it makes it easier to say to them, all right, well, this is what I do. Follow me, so to say. Right? So that made it a little easier to influence them along the right path as we got a little older. Yeah.
In terms of purpose alignment, and if I may ask, what do you think your purpose is? Your purpose within primary school would have been to be the best student that you could be,
yes,
in terms of pleasing your parents. And then within secondary school, it would have been leading that particular generation as head boy in fifth form.
Yes.
You went on to UE and so forth. What do you think your purpose is now in terms of, some may say, making the world a better place, providing opportunities for young people, that type of thing?
Mishra, I'll tell you this. I know the answer to that question easily. My purpose is purely to help people, if I am honest with you. I realized a few years ago why, and I'll put it down to God, why God chose this path for me. It was purely to help persons. When I first came out into practice, I practiced in criminal law for about 3 or 4 years. I did my time there, and when I felt like I no longer wanted to assist in that way, I moved on to something else. I tried corporate law, and I liked corporate law. I was good at it. As a matter of fact, I was the corporate and commercial lawyer for one of the biggest businessmen in this country. When I said to him I was leaving his employ, he was annoyed. He was angry. He said, you know, Dwight, you're so effective. Why would you leave now? And I said to him, I felt like a bird in a cage. I felt like somebody who needed to get out there and help people. I needed to fly. You can't keep a bird cooped up in a cage. And when I left, I said to myself, as much persons as I could assist, I will assist. And that's what kind of brought me into the area of even practicing in personal injuries. That gives me an avenue to help as much persons as I can. When persons get into accidents and whatever the case may be, some will come to me same way. And as much as I can do to assist them, I assist them. So I personally believe my purpose holistically is to help as much people as I can.
People, keeping things people-centered as well.
Yeah.
Even in terms of practicing law, is it more so about the ability to read policy, understand policy, help in terms of legislation and that type of thing? Or is it more so a people-centered career path as well in terms of succeeding for you as an attorney?
I would say it's a bit of both. There's an understanding of the law that is needed, but you try your best to keep it people-centered. And that's why, you know, earlier I said, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you got to be willing to do things that other persons might not be willing to do. Yeah. If you have people at the center of it, you might be willing to do things that maybe somebody in your own profession might not be willing to do, simply out of the love for people. And for me, it's very easy for me to deal with clients and deal with people in general, because I've taken the ego out of my practice a long time ago. So something as simple as, I'll give you for instance, sometimes my colleagues will laugh at me saying, I will book taxi reservations for a client. I check in with them quite regularly. All of my clients will tell you, most of them hear me probably once a week saying me, because I have to make sure that they are good at the end of the day. Whatever treatment they need or whatever is needed, they're getting. And that's why I say to you, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you got to be willing to go the extra mile. Yeah.
What would you say are some of your happiest memories in terms of going back to the Parkinson School? Memories of instances where you knew that you were destined to become a success, or even in terms of helping some of the other students.
Yeah, I've been back to Parkinson School so many times. I'll name a few. I remember when I was about to be called to the bar, the school invited me come and speak to the younger students. That was a very, very good day for me, because they were standing there and they were so attentive about it. And, you know, I stood there and I always try to come to their level and, you know, speak as plainly as possible and let them understand. I remember what it was like when I was your age at the school and so on is going to be fine. And, I give them a nice talking to, even after the official speech was given, I pulled some of them aside and asked them, how you felt about the school. And I explained to them how things would be for them going forward. Everything would work out well if they put in the necessary work and so. And if not every year, every other year, I would say every year the school calls me. Whether it sometimes is a career showcase, and once I am available, I am there. Usually they will call me for speech day as well, because I would give back to the school as well, monetarily same way, because we might not have the best alumni, so to say, for certain reasons. We have a good alumni, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when it comes to the financial part of it, it might not necessarily be the best. So whenever they call on me, I always try to ensure that, I give as much as I could give as well, too. So I generally attend the speech day, because I would tend to sponsor the 5th year students in getting the prizes, because I believe that when you put in the hard work, you should see something for it as well, something tangible. So I would often visit in that regard as well. And then something they would just call me and say, Dwight, first day of school, could you come and talk to these students? Absolutely. For me, it's always a pleasure being on that campus. I call it a campus. They call it the University on the Hill, or the University in the Pine, whichever one. But it's always a pleasure to be back there. It's always a pleasure to see my old school teachers, who I believe contributed so much to my foundation. It's always a pleasure to see my young ones as well too. And they always embrace me when they see me as well too, for the simple reason they know that, I went through what they're going through right now, same way. And I guess there's a respect on that basis as well. And I guess with the way how I speak to them, I don't speak down to them, I speak with them as well too. So we have good conversations when I go as well. And I guess I give them something to aspire to as well too, which is, for me, is a real pleasure. I have a deep-rooted love for that school. And some might say, I've heard persons say, but why you shouldn't even have gone to the school? And I said, no, I was exactly where I needed to be. And if I had to do it again, my father was absolutely right. If I had to do it again, I was going right back to Parkinson.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
What legacy do you want to leave behind, or what do you want to be remembered for? Tremendous work that you're doing in terms of giving back to the Parkinson Memorial School.
Yes.
Leaving a legacy where your family is concerned as well, your parents, your grandparents, and so forth.
Yes.
But what should we remember Attorney at Law Dwight Moseley for?
If you're going to remember the attorney at law, because there's two persons.
Personal Dwight.
There's the attorney Dwight, and then there's the person and Dwight. I'll start with the attorney. I would like to remember as the person who tried the hardest for their clients, for his clients. That was very effective, was never a pushover, and that got things done, right? As a person, I am a very bubbly. I got a friend who said something to me recently that made me laugh. He said, "Well, you are the most unserious person I've ever met before."
I tend to agree.
You tend to agree.
You go into that intensity on your face.
Yeah.
But then you see a bright, big smile pop up as well,
Yeah.
even in terms of work with the Heart and Stroke Foundation. So
Yes.
you see a driven man.
Yes.
But then you also see a very jovial man.
Absolutely. And I always tell persons, Mishran, that there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for everything under the sun. There's a time to enjoy, and then there's a time to be serious. Right? So as a person, I want to remember as that bubbly individual, somebody who did things the way he wanted to do it, same way. I would always want to be remembered as a leader. That is, to me, that's very important. Even at school, I always had this thing where I was not going to follow anybody. Funny enough, we were talking about the message you would give to children. And I think I would be remiss if I did not advise them to, above everything, don't follow persons into nonsense. Be a leader, especially at this when you're leaving primary school, going into secondary school, you will be tested. I don't know, something about that age, between the age of 11 to 14. Peer pressure is a thing, and you will be tested, and you got to rise above those influences and so on. And your mom and your dad would have taught you the right way. Try to do the right things as well. But as I said, I want to be remembered as the person who did things the right way. I would like to be remembered a lot for maybe a lot of the charity that, I would have done during life. And charity is not just about giving money. Charity sometimes could be in the form of giving good advice, looking out for persons and doing the right things, doing right by people. All of that's a part of charity as well too. But overall, I just want to be remembered as a good person. Yeah.
Right. I enjoyed this conversation.
Miss Ron, I enjoyed it as well.
Hearing about your work as a leader.
Yeah.
Hearing about your work in terms of giving back to the Parkinson Memorial School. Right now, the major topic is our common entrance exam.
Yeah.
And there's so many students and their parents and grandparents who may be watching the program this evening. And I'm happy at such a time that we've had to share your time for this particular conversation.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Miss Ron.
Thank you. It really was.
Yeah.
We've come to the end of this special one-on-one with attorney at law, Mr. Dwight Moseley. On behalf of my producer and I am Miss Ron Robinson. Until next time.